Mm-hmm.
Well, welcome everybody. Appreciate everybody joining us here today for a conversation with Darren Fleener from the U.S. Department of Commerce Federal EDA, our local rep. Most of you know that federal EDA's got quite a substantial tranche of funds as part of the CARES Act. So wanting to have a little chit chat with everybody to see if you guys might have some potential programs, or excuse me, some potential projects that might fit some of EDA's programs. So on the line, we have Darren Fleener from Federal EDA. And if it's okay with everybody, maybe we'll just kind of go around the pipe to let him know who everybody is and where you're from. So otherwise it would be chaos. If it's okay, I'll just unmute everybody and you can unmute yourself when it's your time, but I'll just kind of go around and call on folks and you can do a quick introduction. So upper left on my screen is Susan.
Susan, you're muted.
One more time, you were muted.
I think Susan's muted.
Jordan, you said I was unmuted. What the heck?
Wow.
Susan Morris, Isanti County Commissioner.
Welcome. And Jill?
Jill Banky, City of Center City.
Bob?
Bob Voss with the East Central Regional Development Commission.
Elizabeth Mary?
Hi, Beth Thorpe, City of Mora.
Stephanie?
Stephanie Hillesheim, the City of Princeton.
And all I see is City of Pine City.
This is Matthew Van Steenwyck with the City of Pine City.
Welcome. And Bob Barbian?
City of Princeton. Nice to meet you.
Carla?
Good morning, everyone. This is Carla Vita with the City of North Branch.
Welcome. Amy?
Hi, everybody. This is Amy Mell with the City of Rush City.
Joel? Joel? Well, that was Joel Dine with the City of Harris. Stacy?
I'm Stacy with the City of Pine City.
Mike?
Mike Wimmer, Mille Lacs County.
Greg?
Yeah, Greg with SCH, working with Bob on that EDA project in Princeton, but I have a lot of other friends on the call I see.
Excellent. Chisago City? Chisago City? All right, that's Chisago City. Leslie? And that was Leslie Souter with the City of Pine City. Anybody on the phone other than Darren?
Actually, that's me.
Have to clean up your Android.
All right, thank you. And on the phone is Darren Fleener from U.S. Department of Commerce, Federal EDA. Technology doesn't allow Darren to join us on video. Darren tells me he looks a lot like Brad Pitt. So for all of you at home, know exactly what he looks like. So with that, I will turn it over to Darren Fleener with Federal EDA. Darren, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, great. It's a nice group of people on the phone. So Jordan and Bob, thank you guys for organizing the event and allowing some good opportunity for some folks to hear about what's going on in EDA. So I think right off the bat, I just want to cover a few things around the recent appropriation EDA received through the CARES Act, COVID-19 with funding. As Jordan had mentioned, EDA received in the Chicago Regional Office just a little north of $220 million to spend on Recovery Act projects. The first thing that we did was we made institutional grants to our existing economic development districts. That's where Jordan and Bob hail from EDA's perspective. We made institutional grants available to our RLF operators for revolving loan fund, additional revolving loan fund resources. And then finally, we made institutional grants to our university centers. And when that is all said and done, we expect, and so the balance of the money after the competitive or non-competitive grants will be put into a pot of resources for competitive grants. And that's what you guys would be eligible to apply for, or are eligible to apply for. So We expect to have somewhere around 125 million, somewhere in there, in competitive dollars available. There is statewide eligibility. In fact, there's national eligibility for the CARES Act, which means that everybody is eligible to EDA. And I will tell you, my deal flow has increased by a factor of at least 10. So there's a lot of demand for this, as you can imagine. A couple things. The CARES Act addendum follows the same rules as our FY 2020 Public Works and Economic Adjustment Assistance programs. And you can read about those in our Notice of Funding Opportunity. We recently released a Notice of Funding Opportunity that had an addendum for CARES Act projects. This funding is going to be available until September 30th, 2022. I don't expect that we're going to have money available for that long, but that's our eligible period to get the money allocated. One of the things that the CARES Act addendum instructs applicants to do is provide a brief narrative of the economic impacts from the coronavirus pandemic, and then how the project will respond to those impacts. That's really the key, is creating that linkage or that nexus from what were our impacts, and then what are we proposing to do, and how does it respond to those impacts? And that's described in the addendum on page 3 and 4 as a one-page document. For this funding, our projects will generally be funded at an 80% grant rate. So that's some pretty good money, 80% grant. There are circumstances in which that can go higher, but they're going to be very rare, few and far between. So if you're thinking of applying to EDA, expect that you're going to have a 20% matching funds requirement. And then finally, like all of our other projects, they have to be consistent with the region SEDS, and I think you guys are probably all covered by that. If you weren't, we have a provision that allows us to look at other things. So, but I think that you're going to be fine given that you're within the Economic Development District. A few things that EDA cannot do: we don't do housing projects. We don't do pass-through of public funds directly to a private company, okay? It's one thing to build an industrial park and have a private company move in. It's another thing to develop a lot for a private company. So we can't do anything that would directly benefit a private company. We'll be making no grant awards to for-profit organizations. We can't extend utilities or do any sort of infrastructure owned by a for-profit organization. This would include fiber companies, gas companies, any private utilities. We're not going to be able to do anything that would benefit the private company that way. EDA has always and continues to not be able to operate or produce projects on anything that was acquired, any land that was acquired through eminent domain. And we won't be making any awards to nonprofits to be used to purchase equity stakes in for-profit entities. And so generally, you might have a project idea, and I wanted to give you a sense of what should I do to get ready to talk to Darren. As I told you, my deal flow has really increased, and so I've kind of got a few points that I want to share with you that will allow you to prepare for a call or an email. Oftentimes, you'll hear me say, do you have a one-pager on that? And I just wanted to maybe outline a few things that would be helpful for that. So we're going to be looking, of course, for a project description. What is it that you actually want to do? And you can give me the why, I guess, to some extent. It's important to know that, but really we're going to, at this point, be dealing with the CARES Act funding. So the why is really, we talked about that earlier, what you've identified as your economic impact. So an example of that would be, we had a high level of employment dislocation. So we're proposing a workforce training program. That's enough. That's about all I would need. I'll be looking for the grant amount that you're seeking and the match amount and where that source of match is coming from. And that will give opportunity to understand the total project cost. I want to know if there's any job creation, job retention, private leveraged investment. We're going to be looking for any additional distress that you might have in the area. High per capita income, high unemployment rate, or low per capita income. Are you going to propose a project that's in an opportunity zone? Have there been any major recent closures of any large manufacturing or a large dislocation of employment. I'll be looking for who your project partners are. If we're going to be talking about an infrastructure project, I want to know if you have site control. So can you, in your one-pager, include a small map of your project area and indicate on that map who owns the property that you're talking about? And then finally, you know, the consistency that you have with your SEDS in so much as that the project and how you're responding to the COVID is consistent with the strategy that the district has proposed and that has been put to you with the last 5 years. So a couple of last items for the CARES Act. We don't have a deadline for applications. We're going to take applications as they come. I would highly encourage you to contact me through Jordan or just directly, but to discuss your project and talk about how we can make it the most competitive project it could be. We're looking more for, although planning and strategies are eligible, we're also looking for construction projects. So keep in mind that we're looking for all of those, not just construction projects, not just planning projects, but we'll be looking for all of those. And then finally, just always remember that this is going to be highly competitive. So any award is going to be based on availability of funding. So I think I'll just kind of stop there and see if anybody has any questions on what I've tried to give a few little hints to get you prepared to talk about CARES Act projects, and we'll open it up for questions.
All right, I've unmuted everybody, so if you have questions kind of in an orderly fashion or want to float a few ideas by Darren, feel free to do so. If it's specific, you know, after this, as Darren mentioned, if you are interested in having a little more in-depth conversation, let me know. We'll get something set up with Darren. Folks from your organization, city or county, we'll probably pull Bob Voss into that conversation too and see how we can help. But if anybody's got any questions, feel free, unmute yourself and fire away. Anybody?
Everyone's so shy. I'll start out. I'm sure we'll get the ball rolling here. So the $125 million, is that for what, how big of an area are we talking about? The state of Minnesota big, or is there like a bigger region for, I mean, Chicago, you know what I'm saying? So can you give me an idea what the region looks like?
Sure. The money that we have in the competitive pot and in the non-competitive pot serve the 6-state region, which is the federal region 5. So that includes Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Illinois.
So I guess one other follow-up question, what do you see like the amount of, because, you know, for that large of a region, I mean, $125 million doesn't go too far. So what do you see the average grant being?
Well, we haven't made one yet, so we're just getting things started. It's going to just really depend on the project and the scope of the project. I'm generally seeing people come in from somewhere between 1 to 3 million. That's kind of what I'm seeing. You know, anything larger than that, it just gets just a little bit too much, I think. So, you know, 1 to 3 million is you know, and at 3 million, it's going to have some wow.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That frames it up very well for me.
Darren, I have a couple of questions if I could go next. You say there's 125 million that's in the competitive pot. You know, you have your traditional program that's a 50-50 match. And is that another pot of or pool of dollars, or is it just the one?
So yeah, we do have our regular program funds.
Sorry about that. We got
So it's kind of a musical program.
Is Jordan gonna sing?
Yeah.
So let's see. Yeah, we'll pick that back up. So we do have our regular pot of funding. There's also some 2019 disaster funding that we have. Pretty much our regular program funds for FY20 have been allocated. So we're primarily looking at this point, COVID money. Our regular allocation, our federal fiscal year begins October 1, and that's when we would have our next allocation of regular economic development assistance program dollars.
Well, we certainly like the 80%, but 50% is pretty reasonable too. Kind of related to that, now in an application, I take it that there would be wage rates that would be required. And there's a fair amount of administrative work that's involved in one of these grants as well. I would imagine, are some of those costs able to be included in the application cost?
So for anyone who's applying to EDA, the cost of the developing the application and submitting it is borne by the applicant, is not eligible for EDA reimbursement. Post-award, if you get an award from EDA, then we actually encourage you to put some dollars into your application for administration so we know that it's going to get taken care of. And lo and behold, Jordan and Bob at the Economic Development District are always available to help with grant administration and connect you with those folks that would be able to provide you that assistance if you don't have the capacity or just don't want to do it.
Okay, terrific, thank you. And what about what type of wages would we anticipate having to follow?
Any federal award, you would be subject to the Davis-Bacon Prevailing Wage Act.
All right, thank you.
We had one question on the chat box. Darren, is it possible for you to email over those guidelines that you were mentioning before? And just for everybody's FYI, we're recording this. I'll get that loaded up on YouTube, so I will email that out if Darren could send those over, as well as a link to the video for those who couldn't make it today, or if missed a portion of it or whatever, we'll get that out too. So, any other questions?
Yeah, that's not,
oh, sorry, Darren.
no problem at all. We'll get that over to you, Jordan.
Thanks, appreciate it.
We'll get that over to you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
I have one. Do the projects all have to be new, or could it be a recon of like a city project with infrastructure?
Okay, maybe you could just clarify that a little bit. What do you mean? Does it have to be new?
Well, so would it have to be? So I know that you don't want to extend infrastructure, but what could it be like a new water tower? Could it be something like that where you have to replace a water tower, or do you just want to do like things like maybe a reconstruction of a road?
No, new construction is always eligible. So
okay,
again, this CARES Act is an addendum to our existing program. So anything we would do traditionally EDA, we'll do through the CARES Act, with keeping in mind that we're going to be asking you to link your project to the economic dislocation and the economic damage that was done by the pandemic. So if you were to do a new water tower, you would want to think about how do I connect this to the economic impact in my community as it relates to the economic impacts that we experienced during the pandemic.
Say, Darren, kind of building on that, in the past, and is that continuing the case, where say this is a water tower and it's 50% businesses, or the service area is 50% business, 50% residential, that you would do a prorated portion of that based on that?
No, we've kind of left that model, Jordan. And, we would just really look at what are the impacts to, the business community, and how does it relate to things like ability to expand your industrial park, adequate fire flow because you've consumed all of the capacity that tower can provide, the existing tower can provide. So we'd be looking for really what is the connection to job creation, to private leveraged investment? How does it take care of COVID? You know, obviously, if you're creating new jobs, that's a pretty easy nexus to draw, right? This company is going to create 100 jobs. Great. That takes care of 100 people who lost their job. So in that instance, we would just really focus in on you know, what the benefits are going to be to help your economic development efforts.
Darren, a question came up in chat about the, you know, broadband's been a big concern in our area, in many of our counties and rural areas, and some communities too. Those same circumstances would apply for an application for broadband in terms of infrastructure. They'd have to have that tie to job creation and business and tax base and all those things that a normal EDA application would require.
That's correct.
Okay. I think Jana's joined us on the call here too. Jana, did you have anything specific, I mean, that you wanted to?
Yeah, what I noticed about the CARES Act that I thought was different is there was some discussion about the pandemic and I think, I can't remember the exact language, resilience and economic and disaster resilience. I think everybody's really learned that with the pandemic and that systems are really strained. Even before this, in Isanti County, we had a survey that over 70% of the, or 67% of the employers said they couldn't reach their employees due to the lack of poor broadband in the rural areas. Our healthcare employer, there's some significant healthcare employers in the community, and they really feel as though the model they want to move to from a business perspective is more telemedicine, and that they aren't able to do that in the rural areas. And, you know, they, long before the pandemic, they were articulating, we want to, hospitals are not places for people to be. There's a lot of germs there, people get sick. People are happier at home, all of those sorts of things. So we've had employers expressing concerns. We've had two large employers, Pres Homes and the hospital, expressing concerns, as well as smaller businesses and entrepreneurs that are in the rural area. I think Susan can even speak to what it's like to try and run her business with some challenged internet in the rural area.
Yeah, it's so a lot of people in this area actually were working from home even before the pandemic. But so like my husband works with US Bank and he can work from home exclusively. Otherwise he has to drive, 50 miles to the office. And my daughter is an online school teacher. And so she teaches school from the house here. And so the days we have sketchy internet, things get really interesting around here. And there's been days where my daughter's had to pack up her computer and head into Caribou to finish out the day with the classroom for her students. So yeah, I think the economic impact of, now most employers I know in the county, we're recognizing the importance of the ability of letting our employees work from home, and looking into the future are considering 20 to 30% of our workforce working from home if that fits their job. And so, and I was listening to some business news the other day, and many national employers are looking at the same model. I think the COVID has opened up our eyes that, working from home is a good option for some people. And it also cuts down on your infrastructure costs, the buildings that you run. So there's lots of economic impacts. For counties, if we can save money, it's less money we have to tax our residents. So there's lots of implications to these, having access to dependable broadband.
We also have a county that's extremely heavy on commuting. So a huge percentage of the workforce commutes to the metro area, and I don't think we really understand what the impact has been for people during the pandemic in terms of them being able to work from home, especially while their kids are trying to do school from home, and who's got that kind of bandwidth.
Well, the one thing I can tell you, I run a business that does deliveries, and it's been fabulous. I don't have to work around rush hour at all anymore. So there's so few vehicles on the road. I really, really appreciate that.
Any thoughts on whether those arguments would put us in a reasonable position to get some assistance from EDA on broadband?
Yeah, I mean, those are all, you know, I think that what I'm hearing from this area in Minnesota is very similar to what I hear in other areas of the state. And also I serve the state of Illinois. And, you know, there are some very rural areas in the southern half of Illinois who are experiencing some of the very same issues. So it's not uncommon. And, you know, if there are areas that are underserved or not served at all, you know, we can consider those. We may have some issues around areas that are currently served. So, and that is because we have to be careful as a public entity where we're making investments where private industry is already providing service. So if there are projects around broadband, I'd be more than happy to, you know, talk to anybody who wants to look at those. We're going to pay special attention to things like the availability of right-of-way to put this new broadband in. We're going to be looking for an eligible applicant to own and operate any sort of fiber that would be put in. And then we're looking for, of course, you know, how the relationship is with the internet service provider to ensure that the network that we're trying to create would be open access and would be available for really any ISP to be able to provide services around that. So those are a few things to think about, but I think looking at that COVID nexus, that I sent that to Jordan, so hopefully he'll be getting that out to everybody. And then kind of those points that I'd mentioned before, and you can develop a little bit of a one-pager. And if folks want to have a call to talk about broadband after, you know, looking through that and thinking, you know, this might not be a bad fit, well, put one of those together and let's set up a phone call and we'll go through your project.
Thank you.
I'd like to have a follow-up to that. This is Carla in North Branch. We all have internet problems. I reflect exactly what Gianna and Susan says, and I think everybody in this call can reflect that. Earlier you indicated though that this can't be owned by a private company, so I couldn't be Carla Vita company owning this. But so would it have to be owned by the community, or could there be some kind of special relationship?
It would have to be an eligible applicant. So that, for your purposes, would likely be some sort of a rural telephone co-op or electric co-op. We've seen those. We've seen some proposals by universities. Northern Illinois University, if you want an example, has an organization called iFiber, which is an open access network. And then nonprofits are eligible as long as they're working with a unit of local government. So there's kind of that would be the special relationship, would be the nonprofit working with a local unit of government. So those would be the eligible applicants that I've seen for a fiber project.
Great. Isanti County's been working with a telephone cooperative, so that seems like it might work.
On the surface, yes. I will tell you this, and I guess it's fair to say that fiber projects are very, very difficult. It's a big lift, and for as many as I've dealt with in the Chicago region, I think we've funded one fiber project since I've been in EDA in 7 years. They're very difficult. So just know that going in. I'm not saying, I'm not trying to discourage anybody from talking to me about the project. That's totally fine. We can talk about it. But there's just a lot of regulations around the installation, the ownership, and the operations of fiber. And we don't have to go through all those now. We'll talk about them individually, but just know that there's a lot of work to do when you talk about that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Darren? Going once. Going twice. Bueller. Sorry, I watched Ferris Bueller's the other day. Well,
Jordan, I want to again thank you.
Oh,
I want to again thank you for inviting EDA to make ourselves available. I appreciate you and Bob putting this together and everyone's time this morning. We're definitely looking for projects. It's going to be highly competitive, but everybody has the same opportunity. So because I say it's competitive, don't think that that's something I don't want any or all of you to engage in. So if you have a project idea, if you think there's something that's a good fit, or even if you think it's maybe even just a medium fit, I want to hear about it. I want to at least hear about the project, and then if we decide not going to be a great fit, fine, then we have our answer. But definitely looking for projects to get some of these resources out to this part of the state of Minnesota is going to be very important to me. So please consider getting a hold of Bob, Jordan, or myself, and let's have that discussion. So Jordan, thanks again. I wanted to wish everyone a safe and a happy weekend.
Thanks, Darren. Again,
Darren.
I will email that info out that Darren mentioned, as well as a link to the video as soon as we can get that posted here, hopefully around lunchtime or so. With that, if there's no questions, I guess, well, maybe we put things on hold one quick second. Bob, if it's okay, maybe we'll just kind of give a little quick update what we're working on at the ECRDC in regards to federal EDA. We are right now, the other day actually applied to the federal EDA for a tranche of funds for our revolving loan fund, creating a new COVID-19 emergency revolving loan fund. We're hoping that gets approved. That is non-competitive. So the application's in. We're hoping to see funds sometime this summer for that. So $500,000 over 5 counties. If the average loan is 30,000, you can do the math on that one. But we'll keep you posted on that one as well. And maybe Bob, you want to touch base a little bit about the CARES Act, what we're looking at doing for that one?
Yeah, that's kind of it's a supplemental planning grant that would the RDC would assist businesses and communities in the region. We would hire an economic recovery coordinator to deal with communities and businesses and such that have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. And that'd be for a period of 24 months. So we're still kind of shaping the position description and some of the duties and responsibilities for that, but we have kind of a general application into EDA right now for that purpose. So stay tuned. That should be, I don't know, Darren, if you've heard how soon they're going to be making a determination on those applications, but it looks like it's a non-competitive application out to the districts, like Darren had mentioned earlier. So we're optimistic and hopeful that that'll come through and we'll be able to get out there and start helping folks.
Yeah, Bob, this is Darren. I expect we're going to turn those right around. So okay. It should be very timely.
And we'll keep you posted on both of these programs. And frankly, we're going to kind of wanting to enlist your help as well to help get this information and resources out to our local business community. And as we do this, whether it's business retention and expansion visits or whatnot, that's something that we're going to need your help with too, for connections to businesses and being right in the trenches with us as well. So we'll keep you posted as that moves along, if that's a fair way of saying it, Bob.
Yep. And I really appreciate the county and the city input and some of our partners, as we spent the first couple of weeks trying to kind of get as much input as we could for that application. So we knew that we were working on the right kinds of things and not being redundant with other efforts that are going on around the region. There's a lot of folks doing some good things, and we want to make sure that we work as efficiently as possible on that. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anything else for the good of the order? Hearing none, everybody have an absolutely wonderful weekend. Don't get into any trouble. And you know, party like a rock star, I tell you. Thanks, everybody. You should send an email around lunch or so.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
So long, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.